And I would like to thank the organizers to have invited me to come and have a lecture here on innovative movement analysis. I was thinking of introducing to you with a lot of high-tech stuff. What I will try to do is, when the technology doesn't leave me, I was thinking of giving you a whole story about injury and injury prevention in sports, but probably you are all professionals in this area, so I don't have to repeat this. These data that are already known. What is really interesting, and thank you, Christian, for this slide. What is really interesting is that you see that in the EU, over 6 million sports injuries are occurring, are seeing the emergency room every year. I wanted to talk about a little bit about prevention, about injuries, and about overuse injuries. And actually, what I would like to stress was the fact that we see a lot of athletes with these three qualifications, either only one or a combination of, and it's quite amazing how many we see that have some kind of so-called functional problem. But again, it's the question is these leading to injury or not? And it's a story about, I think, the chicken and the egg. If you see something like this, is this indicative for a possible injury coming up, or is the injury is this a real injury in the practice? So what we are looking at is especially injury mechanisms, and try to prevent injuries with the lead to increase the performance without actually harming the athlete's health. And this is a little bit different from the doping story. We're trying to improve performance by giving the athlete the right training volume, training type, and so on and so forth, without actually harming the health of the athlete. And what we are looking for is not only the mechanisms, but we are looking this through a glass of movement, because mostly all these athletes, they are moving in one way or the other, and that movement is going to be indicative for performance. And this is an old publication from Oslo, from Roald Barr and his co-workers, where he actually indicated that biomechanics or movement analysis in the whole story, coming from what is an athlete to this athlete presenting some risk factors in order to finally lead to injuries, can have as influence, or can give as information, movement analysis or biomechanical analysis, which I call are a little bit the same, where biomechanics, pure biomechanics, is the mechanics of movement, and movement analysis is a little bit larger than that. But at least it gives us a good information, an excellent information on how injuries may come if we systematically study the movement of the athletes. And that is what we are trying to develop, looking at the factors that are actually influencing possibility of injury. That's called risk factors. And some are non-modifiable, some you can modify, and especially in my territory, in my research area, we are looking at biomechanical factors, and that, summing up, is kinematics and kinetics in to start with. If you want to have a biomechanics course, I can give also some more information later on, but this goes too. And it's always a fact in sports, it's definitely in elite sports, a balance between load and the capacity of the tissues to sustain these loads. And that's why these overuse injuries, they are very creepy, because they are slowly but surely going to destroy some of the tissue in the beginning without pain. Later on, pain will come and the athlete will start to complain. You, as a professional, you are going to intervene. The pain will go down. It's not sure that the tissue is completely healed, and then it's an indication that when the pain is gone, okay, you can train again. And then with the consequence that the underlying tissue is not fully repaired, you start loading again, and you have again a disbalance between load and tissue load capacity. So this is something that we try to discover in our biomechanical analysis in the lab. And I mean, we are, especially when we are in contact, or when we are working with the Luxembourg Institute for High Performance in Sports, we are mostly doing running analysis, because many athletes, one important compound of their sports is running. So we do, for now, just running analysis. And I will talk a little bit later on future perspectives, but running is something that a lot of people do, and a lot of people get hurt during running because of certain factors that you can read here. What we try to do is also increase the performance of the runners. And you have here in Luxembourg some excellent long distance runners, also mid distance runners. And we try to improve the running style or make it more efficient. And now you can discuss, and we will have this discussion. Does it make sense to, through your testing, to your biomechanical analysis, to change your running pattern? Isn't it not worse? Aren't you not going to decrease the performance and increase the risk for injury when you say to your athletes, well, you know, instead of heel striking, you should do forefoot striking, which is, in my opinion, a dangerous thing to say, because with forefoot striking, if you change it very abruptly, you are putting enormous loads on the Achilles tendon, and you will displace the problem from heel to the Achilles tendon, or let's say, without really having thought about that the tendon, when you have problems there, it's very tough to mend it. And I see some practitioners here in the room that have a lot of experience with that. So what we do in our lab is mainly gait analysis and analysis of running, but one stride in running is gait. These are some examples of the past where there was especially a problem with sampling frequency and resolution of the image, especially when you wanted to do kinematic analysis. Later on, there has been the development of other technologies, like, for example, with film. I still remember that in my young years, I had to digitize cinefilm, so we had to go to the developer in order to get this 16 millimeter film developed by a professional, by Kodak, for example. And then you had the possibility of digitizing everything manually, frame by frame. And if you have 100 hertz, that's 100 images per second. If you want to do a lot of images or a lot of time, you know how much time that it will take. So the main differences were long processing times. You had low frequencies of measurement. For 100 hertz or 60 hertz is not enough when you are looking at very high accelerations with high speeds. So a lot of the video analysis were done with 24 hertz in the past. That is way too low. With video analysis, you cannot see anything. You see what the eye sees, so you should have at least 200 to 240 hertz like you have on a normal iPhone, for example. And it's only in 2D that you see. So you don't have any idea about rotations, for example, because you can't see them. With the coming of 3D motion capture, it has a lot of things changed, because you instead of looking at images, you are looking at markers that require less, or that send out less information per unit of time. So, but you need more cameras in order to see how these markers are reflecting the light per unit of time in a standardized volume. If I make myself clear, you have a marker that is caught by 2 or 3 cameras. These cameras, they must be calibrated in a calibrated volume, and these cameras will, per unit of time, per millisecond, for example, if you have 1000 hertz, will see how this marker is changing in that calibrated volume. And that is what we call motion capture. It's not images anymore, but it's matrices, and that is easier to look at, to measure, and you can increase the frequency of your measurements, and that is actually what you want to do. So we have developed a standard protocol with our colleagues of the HML in the clinic of Eich, where we have a small lab, and we are looking at, before we install the athlete, we need to equip them with these little dots here. You see this, these are light reflecting markers. So the cameras are just capturing this light and not the image, which therefore you can increase the frequency. Just as an example, this is one marker. 3 cameras are capturing this, and you can then reconstruct afterwards in with a dedicated software all these little dots. Normally there are 35 dots. They represent anatomical landmarks that you can then reconstruct in real time, actually. And this is a video of how this looks like, or if you want, you can connect the different dots with lines that are supposed to be limbs or pieces of the body. And then if you can do this, you can put some avatar on it, and you can put a skeleton on it, and that makes it all a little bit more exciting for us to look at, instead of looking at sticks. And what we do then is, then we have, and this is the innovation of it. What we do then is, after we have a lot of data, a lot of graphs, a lot of tables, and these information is sent to a platform where, using artificial intelligence, we can then get all the information back with the results. And we can see now not only the kinematic results, but our treadmill has here underneath a force plate, and then we can measure also the ground reaction forces in the 3 dimensions. This is the vertical one, which is for us the more important one. And then you can look at and you can calculate through inverse dynamics. That's a very nice word to inverse dynamics, a very nice concept. You can calculate the power, and you can see, for example, negative power around the knee means braking or eccentric work, and positive power is concentric work, and you can see the difference between the 2 legs. This person has a problem in one of the knees, and we should intervene here in order to balance this. So the problem with this technology is that about 2/3 of the time we are putting the markers on the anatomical landmarks. And then we test maybe 10 to 15 minutes. We would like to do the inverse. We would like to test more in order to get more information, rather than waste our time to put these landmarks on. And there is a new development now. Instead of using these kind of landmarks, there is something that is called markerless tracking. And this is the future, in my opinion, where you could send in the patient or the athlete, and he runs in that calibrated volume, and he can immediately be measured without any concern about what clothes he's wearing, because we now have to ask our athletes to wear very tight clothes in order for the landmarks to be put on in order for the markers to be put on these landmarks. So we are working with that company together with Qualisys, with the cameras, in order to get this technology better developed. And I think this is the future for our, and that is something that the future I would like to communicate, is that actually we are developing in Luxembourg right now the Movement and Performance Lab in Differdange, where the Ministry of Sports has had the fantastic idea to put there a new building with a very high-tech, sophisticated biomechanics lab. So I was asked to give or to develop the concept of that lab, and with my experience in Oslo, where I was working 10 years as the head of the biomechanics department, I really wanted to develop one of my dream lab, one of the best labs that we can construct. And so I got a little bit of money to play around with in order to buy some equipment that we could use. And that's how it looks right now. For last week, this is an image. You are all welcome to visit the Sportfabrik in Differdange. It's close to, it's in Oberkorn, next to the handball pitch. And so we have developed a lab that, in my opinion, will be in the Grosse Region one of the most sophisticated labs that one can have, with a multi-sports lab that is half a handball pitch. It's about 9 meters high, so you can throw a ball there. We will have a whole lab dedicated to body composition, where we can we had the chance to be able to purchase a DEXA. We will have a virtual reality and functional reality room. We have the running lab with an instrumented treadmill, and we have here a sprint tunnel that's about 50 meters long, where with all these labs are provided with cameras, with high-speed cameras, so you can do kinematics, and there are force plates all over the place, so we can do kinetics, and therefore we can calculate inverse dynamics, not only in running, but that's what it's going to look like. This is a rendered image of what I wanted it to look like, with the restraints of the law, because these are they are in such a material that when you bump into it, you don't get to hurt yourself. It's called Schutzprallwände. They need to have a certain color, but you get an idea of how it is going to look like. There will be cameras here all over the place. These are some of the stats of that lab. So we will have also wearable sensors like EMG and IMUs and accelerometers, and we'll have an instrumented treadmill. DEXA will be able to measure also reaction time in athletes. We'll have isokinetics and much more when it comes to strength and power determination or assessment. This is another view. You see here the running lab. We will have here in this area 16 force plates, so we can measure ground reaction forces in different circumstances, in different sports. We were asked to develop a lab for many sports, as many as possible. I think that we succeeded in that. The only sport that we cannot cover, unfortunately, is rifle shooting, but for that we have already have the privilege to be able to install some targets for archery. So since you have some good archers, I think the Archery Federation can profit from this. This is the running lab. It will also, everywhere you will have cameras to do the kinematics. This is how it looks today, or at least a couple of days ago. This is the place where we are going to have the force plates, some extra force plate holes. Here is the strength and power area, with some observations possible there in that room. This is the sprint tunnel, where we will have also about 12 meters of force plates laying around there. So I'm very excited to start up this lab with my colleagues. It's of course not how you call it, something that is done by just one. I have some colleagues sitting here in the room that are actually together with me the architects of this lab. It's going to be a fantastic lab, and don't be afraid, especially when you are in the neighborhood, to call by and have a look. You might ask when it's going to open. In my opinion, it will not be opened before the end of November. Let's say that we are now collecting the different material. We are implementing and developing methodologies in order to have a baseline test package ready for all athletes, and then what we are going to do is to have it formally opened with la fanfare, comme on dit, but that will be only, let's say, not before mid next year. But it will be worthwhile, and I'm very proud and glad that we in Luxembourg now have finally our elite movement analysis laboratory. Without this, I would not, and without my colleagues, I would not not have been here. And I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart of the nice collaborations that we have had these last 2 years, and I hope that in the future, in the very near future, I will be able to see every one of you in the Sportfabrik. Thank you very much for your attention.